we have 47,000 agents in our MLS, agents. So we have the number of people in a small city, like as agents here. So it's radically different markets. So you've got people that immediately they had to stop paying their mortgage. And then you've got people who, rich as God, they bought a $3 million condo like you would go buy an expensive purse. It was a whimsical, you know, just a sort of a whim to buy it. And they really don't have to sell it. And so they can just sit there and leave it empty. And typically they live out of the country and they don't have to come here. They can't come here right now, you know. So their attitude would be, this is my list price. If you want to list it, great. If you don't want to list it, this is the price I'm going to get. If you can't sell it for that, I'm not going to sell it. So I don't take those kind of listings. I don't take listings that I can't sell, because I'm not in the business of listing. I'm in the business of selling property. If I can't sell it, I don't want to list it, because what I've done is now assign failure to myself and have you angry at me and have you wanting me to spend a lot of money and trying to make me feel guilty and playing with my head. And I don't like that. So I just can't do it, because it makes me no money. It just costs me a lot of money and heartache and aggravation. And, you know, of course now, I don't know what's happening by you guys, but we're shelter in place. We can't do open houses. We are physically in condo buildings. You can't get into show. They don't want you in there unless you live there or unless you're a family member, especially in expensive buildings. You're not getting in. They, you know, they view you as a walking microbe, a walking petri dish, that you got cooties. They don't want you in there. That's the end of it.
We're shelter in place right now, but fortunately they've deemed real estate essential. So we're still able to go out and show. They're highly frowning on open house, which makes sense. Like we can't input them into MLS right now. So it won't go out on like realtor.com or Zillow that we're doing an open house.
You can put them in MLS, but you're essential. That's weird. We can put them in MLS, but we got to show them virtually.
Well, we can put our listings in MLS. We can't put our open houses in MLS.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah,
who's Denzali?
Denzel.
Okay.
Where's your face, Denzel? Show me your hair all grown out.
No, I'm not showing my face.
Denzel's in our market. We went to grade school together.
If you're not showing your face, baby, it's going to be a tough haul to get a luxury listing. I'll tell you that right now. Come on now. Don't make me put my mask on.
Hold on. I'll take my rag off my head. Hold on. Okay, Lesley, you might have to tell me how to do this.
Should we get started, Lesley?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm ready. We're going to talk about luxury in a market where people are standing in food lines.
Yep.
Right?
Why not?
Yeah.
Because when one thing goes that direction, then we're supposed to go the opposite direction. Isn't that how it works?
Well, I would say exactly, because what's happening now is a lagging indicator of what's already happened.
Correct.
So don't fixate too much on what's happening now, because this too shall pass. And when it passes, if you aren't already moving forward, then you've lost a lot of momentum there, right?
Absolutely.
So look, if we want to talk about luxury, I want to say this. You know, I think that the key place, there he is. Hi, how are you, Denzel?
I'm good. How are you?
And this is what you had to prepare yourself for? Like, you look great. You know, your skin is glowing, you're smiling, your eyes are twinkling, you're wearing glasses, so that makes you look smart. Here, get a 29% pair of glasses and immediately you look more intelligent, don't you think? Yeah, I look
agree.
sort
I
of
agree.
bookish. Don't I look like a data wonk when I put my glasses on?
That's right.
That's it. That's it. So Denzel, that makes you look like a scientist. You know, you look like a high C. Do you all know about the disc profile?
Oh, yeah.
Who knows the disc profile? Doesn't he look like a high C?
Yep.
Yeah. We're going to just call you professor from now on.
Okay, that works.
All right. So look, let's start with mindset. Okay. So to me, mindset, luxury, 3 things. I'm enough. I belong. I bring value. If you're thinking of yourself standing in the most expensive neighborhood in your city and you feel completely comfortable saying those things to yourself, you're good to go. And the question is, if you're not, how do you get there? So let's talk about what that means. I'm enough. So Chris, have you ever listed a $750,000 property before?
I did last summer.
Now here's the real question. Have you ever sold one?
I did, and I got both sides of it.
Fantastic. So do you feel like you're enough with regard to selling a $750,000 property?
I do.
Okay, good. So your name is Oricel?
Yes, that's my name.
Okay, and you go by Ori?
Yeah, either is fine.
Okay.
It just depends.
And then we got Denzel Washington and Lesley HP. Okay, so do you all feel like you're enough? Are you enough to sell the most expensive property in Wichita?
I'm still working on that.
Of course.
Okay, so how will you know when you're enough?
I guess once it's done.
Once it's done, okay.
Hmm.
So what about I belong? So tell me about the top neighborhoods in Wichita. What characterizes those neighborhoods?
I would say size, I would say finish, and I would say the people that buy them. You know, it's more white collar, college educated, business owners.
Okay, and are these typically owner occupants?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So interesting. So your top market in Wichita is owner occupied. Okay.
We're not a destination hotspot.
There's not a lot of reason to fly into Wichita.
Okay, and so that's interesting because if you were ever able to define a value proposition that Wichita offers that would bring people from outside of Wichita to you, then that would give you a distinct advantage as an agent in the luxury sector. So sometimes you're selling the market as it exists, and other times you're actually helping to define the market. I'll give you a perfect example. 10 years ago, if I tried to sell, there were a lot of Brazilian buyers in Miami Beach. And so before the downturn, let's even go back a little further than 10 years. Let's say 2005, when it was booming, there was a lot of Brazilian buyers in Miami Beach. If I tried to sell them something in Fort Lauderdale Beach, they'd be like, there's no Brazilians in Fort Lauderdale Beach. I don't want to go to Fort Lauderdale Beach. I want to go to Miami Beach, because this was what they felt comfortable with and what they knew. But lo and behold, now it's really changed a lot in Fort Lauderdale Beach. There's been a lot of new luxury construction. Everything that used to look mom and pop, 2-story motels and stuff like that, mowed down. Now we got Ritz-Carlton and the W and Auberge and all these beautiful fancy buildings. And now all of a sudden internationals want to come to Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale had to decide that, had to decide to create itself in a way that drew internationals. Now, what's interesting here is it's, to me, it's sheer genius to come into the luxury market in a really strange circumstance like this where everything is shaken up. That's an advantage. When you're trying to break into something, you want to break in when everything is shaken up. Why? Because business as usual just won't work for now. And so, boom, all of a sudden, here you come in, and you're an unknown quantity for the most part. And so business as usual, you're not business as usual. All of a sudden, you're like, hey, here I am. And you have to own that internally, that you belong there. So you've told me everything about these wealthy areas, except what is the neighborhood like? Are there country clubs? Where do people belong? Are there restaurants? What kind of school systems do they have? What gathers people in those areas? Tell me.
Most of the larger
Say it.
neighborhoods in that price range, all of the kids are private schooled. A lot of them are doctors and lawyers and business owners and executives, higher end executives. A lot of them do either they're around a private golf course or very close to one.
Okay, so golf is big.
Yeah.
Are country clubs big?
We have 4 country clubs in Wichita.
And what about charity? Is charity big?
Yeah, probably not.
So
If
Junior
you
league
were
is
if you were wealthy, how would you meet people in Wichita?
I
Are
would
there-
definitely say golf, and I would definitely say, you know, dining out, different places to go that way.
Golf, dining out, different places to go, houses of worship,
No.
private schools?
Private schools, yes.
Okay, so therefore, parents, parent associations in private schools. So if you were to sponsor something in a private school. So there's lots of different avenues. What we're doing right now is sort of, think of this as a warm up before an exercise. We're just warming ourselves up and beginning to think, if I belonged there and I felt that I was enough there and I wanted to bring value there. Those are really the things. Am I enough? Do I belong? Can I bring value? And many times if you bring value, the other two are solved because you've got the goods. So what does it mean for you to bring value in a neighborhood like, Chris, you're getting ready to list a $750,000 property? What's the value that you're bringing as a realtor and as a person to that scenario and to the people you will meet while you're marketing that?
I think as a realtor for the neighborhood, I am bringing value because I have completely renovated a property in a neighborhood where a lot of properties are from straight out of the 70s and 80s and early 90s. A lot of the people in the neighborhood are of older generation. They either bought the house or built the house, and the house has remained pretty much the same since the day they bought it.
So basically you're taking almost what's a wholesale property and turning it into a retail property.
Yes.
High-end retail.
High-end retail.
High-end retail. So that's a genius value proposition right there, because a lot of people don't have the skill set to do that. They don't even have the imagination to do that. And some of them, if they're owner occupied for a long time, the fact that it's out of date hasn't really caught up with them yet. They still remember how exciting it was when they made this improvement or that improvement. Could be 20 years ago, but it's like out of date now, but they don't get it. And they're actually thinking if they gave a tour of the home, they'd be proud of it and they'd be pointing it out. And in your mind's eye, you would be rolling your eyes and going, okay, that's totally yesteryear, but thanks for sharing, you know? Okay, so I'm enough, I belong, I bring value. To me, those are the elements of the luxury mindset. And by and large, once you get out of your own way, you populate your head with I bring value, and you don't populate your mind with, oh gosh, am I enough? Do I belong here? Am I, You know, am I feeling like a phony or a fake here because I don't really fit in, or I don't live in a property like that, or whatever noise happens in your head potentially, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is not focusing on yourself, but focusing on what you're offering your sellers and buyers. Okay, so I think that's important. And, you know, it really begins with understanding that market, right? So let's say you wanted to specialize in luxury. So first of all, you really need to know where are the luxury markets in your city. If you can map them, right? And then you need to know which luxury markets are worth spending your time and money on. And I'm going to say, for all intents and purposes, from my point of view, time and money are the same thing. That comes from the pot of resources you have. And for every hour or every dollar you spend on something, you have to be able to anticipate a return. So if properties are on the market for a really long time, and if there's not much inventory, is that a market worth investing in? Yes or no, and why or why not?
I'm kind of back and forth with it, because a lot of the higher end stuff does sit on the market for a long time, but I don't know what's being done behind the scenes or what the conversations that have been had and why they're sitting there that long.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I know
the
that we have
the question sort of becomes, are you confident that it's sitting on the market for a while, but it is going to sell? Or are most of them expiring? And of course, the other question is, so Chris, you're taking that listing. Did you already take it? Okay, and for how long? How long is your listing agreement?
He muted. Hold on, he's muted. There you go.
Sorry, I was on a different call. What was the question?
How long is your listing agreement for?
On my big flip out that we're doing, it'll probably be for a year. I mean, I'm sure it's my investor. She's not going anywhere. So I can put it out for as long as I need to. And
Okay, and generally speaking, for closed properties, what's the days on the market?
in that price range, 6+ months.
6+ months, and you've got a year listing agreement.
Right.
You're good. Woe to you if it's in the reverse.
I would love it. I would love to have this conversation in about a month after this thing goes under contract.
Yeah, well, Lesley will give you my number. I'd love to have it too. So let's take, I keep a branch office at eXp in Sunny Isles Beach. Sunny Isles Beach runs along A1A, which runs along the ocean. It's so tightly developed now that you have to just have faith that the ocean is there, because from the street, the buildings are right next to each other and you cannot see the ocean. You would have to go through the building to the other side. You'd be like, oh, I'm right on the beach. Yeah, okay, but that's how close together the buildings are. Sunny Isles Beach is 1 square mile, and it's a tale of two cities. On the west side of A1A, which is not on the ocean, average price point $350,000 to $400,000. On the east side, $2 million starts it off with a small shoebox condo with an oblique view, not a direct ocean view. So, and less than 1,000 square feet. So you've got really two different worlds, and the properties are, my goodness, there's so much inventory, and it's listed at such a price that there are years worth of inventory. It would take years to sell the existing inventory. So you can imagine it's a very different environment in which I would be reluctant to spend my marketing dollars unless somebody was willing to list, you know, within that list to sale price ratio. So let's talk about that for a minute. You're in a neighborhood, generally speaking, the higher the price point in your neighborhood, especially in single family, the more unique the homes are. Chris, is the home that you're listing now, is that a unique home in the area?
Very unique.
Yeah, this is where presenting your value as a market expert and being able to bring value to the property becomes so important, because you have to justify that price in the buyer's mind. The buyers have to be lining up and willing to pay it. So you have to know what makes them want to pay it, and you have to know who has the means and the willingness to pay it, right?
Right.
So where are you going to go fishing for buyers for this property?
You know, that is a question that I have absolutely racked myself with since we bought this place in October. You know, it was one of those, got my investor excited about it, saw the potential in the profits, everything like that. Never really thought of the latter part of it, of how am I going to sell this? So
Welcome. There you go. Okay.
So that is something Lesley and I have. Lesley has kind of taken the help with the designing portion of this, as far as getting me in the right frame of mind as far as designing and working the space out. We've chatted a little bit about ideas here and there about how to get this presented and get it out to the people that need to be seeing it. And so a lot of my excitement for today's Zoom call was to hear some ideas and some ways to really find those buyers buying in that price range.
Okay. So you're really here to talk about marketing, right?
Marketing and
choosing a target market, a target population.
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Super. So when you're looking at market, let's say your situation is one thing. We're going to address it, but we're not going to focus on it, right? So what we really want to look at is, how do you choose a luxury market? How many luxury subdivisions would you say there are in Wichita?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
I know nothing about Wichita. Are there 10? Are there 20? Are there 5?
Well, I was looking, that's what I'm sitting here doing. I was looking on MLS. There's 204 properties listed right now, over 400. There's
Okay.
130 listed over $500,000.
Okay, and how many have sold in the last 6 months over $500,000?
There's 20 pending over $500,000. And let me get to sold. Sold. And this is for Chris and Ori. I put in Wichita, Mays, and Andover, knowing that those are probably where we're going to see. I guess I could have picked Derby too, but so 6 months, there's been 54 houses sell over $500,000.
And 20 pending.
And 20 pending.
Okay, and what's your average days on the market?
So here's something, and maybe you can explain this, or Chris or Ori pipe in. So it shows that the low and the high, so the low is 0, the high is 1,083, which could have been new construction, I'd have to look. So it took them a while to get it built and they put it on early. Or it could have been a model home that sat there and counted. But then they have average 108, and then they have median 51. So I'm like,
okay, this is super important. Why is it important to distinguish between average and median?
I don't know what the difference is, so you're going to have to tell me what that is, and then I'll tell you what my thought process is.
Okay, let's go back to my Sunny Isles Beach example. If I tell you that on the west side of Sunny Isles Beach, things are selling between 350 and 400, and on the east side, things are selling for, let's say, 8 million, 7 million. Does average in Sunny Isles Beach matter? No, because you have such diverse market segments in Sunny Isles Beach, the average is pretty meaningless. So what would be more beneficial is to look at median. So what is median all about?
The middle.
Okay, the middle in what way? It's the point at which there's exactly the same number that sold above in price versus the same number that sold below in price. Okay, so it's the more common sales point. So in other words, if you had an average sales price and something sold for $50,000 and something else sold for $3 million, and you said the average sales price is 1.5, what we know is there's nothing for sale there for 1.5. Those are two distinct markets. They have nothing to do with each other, and your statistics are totally useless. So when you're approaching market statistics in luxury, it's very important to use your common sense to say which statistics matter, which ones are relevant. So let's say, for example, you would want to know what are the sales in a particular subdivision like, right? So let's say you're in a zip code, and this happens in urban markets a lot, like let's say Manhattan, which is where I originally come from. You could have in Manhattan, you got a homeless guy peeing next to a $20 million townhome, right? And that's like the sublime and the ridiculous all mixed together, and that would be Manhattan for you. So the average of anything in Manhattan means nothing because there's public housing and expensive luxury property within the same block sometimes, you know, doesn't matter. So in single family settings, that doesn't tend to be the case. In single family settings, if you're in a subdivision, you would want to know what's the data in that subdivision look like. Because let's say you're selling, Chris, the most expensive home in that neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, so you really, really have to justify that price for people to reach up to that. So what's the difference between your price per square foot and the price per square foot that things are selling for in that neighborhood? Do you know?
I do not, other than just size. I mean,
If I were you, I would make a note of that. So you want to become, this is part of what you're going to bring to the table. You have to become a market expert in that subdivision. Okay, so you've chosen a list price at a certain price per square foot. You need to know what things are selling for price per square foot in that subdivision, and what, if you're deviating from that, why? For example, does the home have, you said it has almost 6 acres of land, right?
Right.
Do most properties there have 6 acres of land?
Nope.
Okay, so then you would need to know what is the value of that land, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And does that land bring value because that makes it an uber luxurious thing? Or is it because you could subdivide that land and build another luxury home? See,
No.
those are things I don't know about your area.
It's all water.
Yeah, it's on water, so it's going to be considered luxurious because it's on water. You have your private dock, and you can have your own paddle boat or whatever on there. And
Okay, and you would want to know what's the difference between properties that are on water versus off water, and what's the premium for that? What would an appraiser say is the difference between on water versus off water? You have to sort of think like an appraiser.
that's
And
scary.
one of the things you may want to consider counseling your seller, if they're serious about selling, is have an appraiser come in and do an appraisal. And let's see how close your list price is to what the appraiser says, because now you know what you're up against. Because let's say that you're going to sell it to somebody and you get it under contract. What's going to happen if it gets appraised $150,000 less than you have it under contract for? Now your deal's going to blow up. How can you prevent that? So you might want to learn to answer that appraisal before you have it under contract.
Okay.
Is that something the seller would be willing to do? A few $100s, right? Maybe a little more.
When she financed it with a bank here in town, and they financed a portion of the repairs based on the after repair value. And so
Okay.
at that time, the appraiser came in October, and I had to make a list a mile long of all the repairs we were going to do. And at
Good.
that time, they said the after repair value was, I think they got to 699 basically.
Okay. So that's really good for you to know. Right? And the question is, if your seller wound up selling at 699, would they accept it?
Yes, in a heartbeat.
Okay, so that's good to know. So for now, you keep that information to yourself, but let's say a buyer came in and tried to lowball 600. You know, you could always step in and say, well, gee, here's what the appraised value is according to Joe Blow here, right?
Right. Yep.
And so that becomes a tool for raising your price. And depending on what happens in the market in the next month or two, you know, your seller might be willing to go a little below that. And then you could say, hey, the seller's willing to sell it below appraised value, 675, 685, whatever. But this is the limit because look, this is what it appraised for.
Right.
And we can justify that value. And then you may want to sort of point out what the value of the land is. I think it's important if you have an understanding of what the value of the land is, right?
I
Okay,
agree.
so knowing your market segment, knowing your subdivision, and basically, how many homes are in that subdivision?
It probably a 75 to 100. I mean, it's a large subdivision, but it's not that large. I mean, it probably
So have you prepared documents showing what has sold? And are you familiar with the properties that have sold?
I've seen that. I've driven by 3 of them in the neighborhood that have sold in the last year. But as far as comparing it to our subject home, they don't compare. They're not on the water. They're 4,000 less square feet.
So, you know, when you're talking to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and you say, here's four things. Here's 3 round things and a square thing. What makes this one not like the other ones? This is really what you've got to be able to do if you have no comps for your property. What makes this one different from the other ones? And though whatever those differences are that bring value, that's what you've got to highlight in your marketing.
Okay.
Okay. So Ori, tell me about what you're doing in the luxury sector or in the higher points of price in the Wichita market.
I do have, I try to expand my connections through the church and some
Okay.
schools that I know people. And I try to connect with people who has pretty much, I try to socialize as much as I can. And then I try to understand their way of thinking. And I just try to find a way to bring value to them. So since I just started just a few years ago, I'm just getting out there and learning how to do it.
Okay, so you just started just a few years ago. So
yeah,
you're a solid realtor.
I can say yes.
You're not a new jack anymore. So just shed that from your mind right now. There's nothing new about you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you're a seasoned, experienced realtor, right?
Yes.
Own it. Okay.
Okay.
So what's the average price point in your market and the median in Wichita in general?
I would say 170, from 160, I want to say 160 to 220. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie or
And what's
Chris.
your average price point for sales?
200, 180 to 200.
180 to 200, and you want to get it up to, you want to get it up higher?
I do.
Okay, so what you want to do is move into a higher price market segment?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So let's talk about how to go from a mindset of I'm enough, I belong, I bring value, to knowing your market, which when you're presenting a listing in the marketplace, you've got to know your market, what makes your property different than the other properties, what justifies your price, and what potential hurdles you may face. Because it's one thing to market things, It's another thing to sell them. It's one thing to get them under contract. It's another thing to get to the closing table, right? So now let's talk about what it takes. Each of you should have a strategy to become a market expert that other people would not question that you're a market expert. Do you feel like a market expert right now? Any of you?
I think I can improve a lot more. I can do a lot more, honestly.
Okay, so does that mean you feel a little bit like a market expert and maybe in some areas?
I do. I feel
Okay.
like I can help a lot, but also I always try to learn. And if there's anything that someone can teach me, I'll take it. I'm always open to learn.
Perfect, perfect, because the market is not static. The market is dynamic. The market is constantly shifting, and right now we've got a shift that we have no idea. It's almost like if we each put out a $5 bill and we walked out with a closed bag and we have no idea what's in the bag. And when we open up the bag, it could be yesterday's garbage, it could be diamonds, we have no idea. So the market is shifting in ways that, you know, I don't care who tells you they can predict it. I just don't even believe they can, because all that has to happen is one federal policy change or one significant thing going on globally, and then all of a sudden, all your assumptions are shot and you're starting from square one again. You don't know. Like I was reading an article this morning. I mean, look, we're talking about luxury in a pandemic that occurs once every 100 years. So I'm reading this article, and the article is basically saying, hey, that's great that everybody in the United States has enough ventilators in their local geographic areas right now. What's going to happen when these countries that are spanned across the world that don't have ventilators, that have multi-millions of people in 6 ventilators, what's going to happen in those markets when there is no such thing as social distancing, because there isn't room in a home for people to get 6 feet away from each other because you've got 12 people living in a room? What's going to happen then when that pandemic completely overtakes a place? So then you go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Or they put on the news, just in terms of the panic and herd mentality, they put on the news, oh, Smithfield, 5% of the pork market, Smithfield has closed down their pork plant because it's overrun with infection. So what does that tell people? Oh gosh, all the end of the world people are going to come out now. They've got 1,000 canned goods in their basement already. They're going to go buy another 1,000. Now you've got food shortages because some report in the media caused panic. Right? So what we've got right now is this hair trigger thing going on. Oh, people are excited. Things are looking good. The Dow is up, 1,000 points today, 2,000 points. Tomorrow, something horrible happened, and now they're talking about food scarcity. Now the Dow is down 2,000 points. So you just don't know where to get your equilibrium, and you have to be prepared for that. So I told you I come from New York. When we ride the subway in New York, there's a train called the D train. What I noticed about the D train is when the train is moving forward, it rocks back and forth. It rocks wildly. And so you're rocking like this, right? But if you keep your knees bent, it doesn't matter. So you have to stay very flexible right now. And, what I would say is you've got to look at what's going on. I want to go back to something that you mentioned, Chris, when you mentioned who were the owners of luxury properties. You said doctors, lawyers, and executives, right?
Yes.
What disc profiles are doctors, lawyers, and executives, if we just want to generalize?
Very high C's.
So their attention to detail, what else? Is there a controlling mentality among doctors, lawyers, and executives?
Yep, they like to be in control. They like to be very slow and methodical. They do not make impulse buys. it takes them a while to arrive at a conclusion.
Okay, and so if we mix that with the hair trigger worries that people have right now, the highs and the lows that are going on for people emotionally and socially, what's going to counteract both of those things? If you're dealing with people who, the wealthier they are, the more they're high D's and high C's, the more they're into control and they're into granular levels of awareness. They're going to nitpick your listing for typos, right? And
yep.
I call them the spreadsheet guys.
Yep.
Because when I have people who are in those disciplines, you know, I come with a spreadsheet. So don't mess with me. What you can see is I'm just as much of a numbers person as you are. I have that capability. And maybe I don't really like detail, but you know what? I'm highly capable of detail. And I can memorize that detail, spit it out to you, show it to you in different colors, put it on pretty spreadsheets, show you trends and bar graphs. You want to see that? You like data? Here we go. I got a book for you, you know. So this is, here we are in this environment. It's a very unpredictable environment, but data rules. In my opinion, data rules, because I think in this environment, even people for whom money is no object, they are less likely to make an impulse buy, because even their fears of scarcity can come up. Even their concerns about people who are wealthy, they still want value. They want to know that it makes sense for them to put their money into this property,
Right.
that it makes sense. Yeah, so let's talk about a strategy for each of you to become a market expert. This is what most luxury training, in my opinion, does not do. It doesn't give you a strategy to become a market expert in your market. So there's no one size fits all. If you guys and me all went to a luxury training together, and I'm sitting in a market that's characterized by second home buyers and investors, typically cash buyers on the ocean, who have the capacity to do wild impulse buys. Oh, I like this one, I'll take 3. You know, they can just do whatever they want. If I'm in that type of market, what's likely to happen with a backdrop? Now see, look, Ralph put a background of Sunny Isles Beach behind me. That's not my view, right? You can see it's static. There's no wind blowing, the trees aren't blowing, everything. Okay, it's a fake environment, but the reality is that's the environment in here. Now, let's add to that an environment of a pandemic and a bunch of hospitals made out of tents and a 2-mile line of trucks and cars that are going to pick up boxes of free food, okay? And let's add to that airports with large segments shut down, cruise lines not moving. So what's going to happen to my international buyers?
They dry up.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even know if they're going to be allowed to come here. And if I'm Asian right now and I come here, I don't even know if somebody's going to spit in my face and blame me for the pandemic, okay? Yeah. So one of the things you need to know is who are the current buyers in your location? Who are they? So go into the tax rolls. One of the things you would want to know is it's your belief that these are owner occupied. So take a look and see for yourself. Is the address, the return address in the tax roll the same as the property? Is that true over and over and over? What is the market segment? Do you have a way of knowing where those buyers came from? Because we do, in our MLS, we have a way of knowing what zip code they came from, or if they came from out of the country or out of the state. And people are asked to fill that in. They don't have to, but they're asked to.
Ours doesn't have that.
Okay, so you would want to see how you could learn that, right? You would want to see how you could learn that. And part of how you're going to learn that is there's a lot of pendings in your market, right? Are there pendings in the subdivision right now,
Yes.
Chris?
No.
No pendings? Okay. But you can access who the agents were that sold, right?
Yes.
So you could contact those agents and say, listen, I wanted to send you something. I just put this property on the market. It's an amazing value. It's an amazing property. And I want you to know more about it. And I would welcome for you to bring your buyers. By the way, I noticed that you sold at, XYZ Clover Avenue. And tell me, where did you get that buyer from? Where did the buyer come from? And just make conversation and massage that and learn a little bit about that. You'll be surprised how much you'll learn. And I think, everybody's home right now. It's pretty easy to reach people. And the fact that you're doing that kind of personalized calling, can probably get you some recognition as a market expert in the area and just connecting with people. And you want to begin to know who are those people that are selling properties in that subdivision. Is it the same agents over and over again? Are there agents that own that subdivision? Do you know?
I don't know, but I know typically in our market, in that luxury price range, I was just having this conversation with my investor the other day. There's probably 5 to 10 agents that you see their name over and over and over and over. And occasionally you catch a one-off agent that caught the buyer at the right time and got the property under contract. But for the most part, the listing agents are the same 5 to 7, maybe 10 agents.
Okay, so let's talk about how you become a market expert where people are going to begin to think, hold on, excuse me. Say hi to the captain.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, you got your hair combed.
Yeah,
It's a long-term goal.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm joining the meeting on another system. Can you let me in?
Yes, I
You
can.
see that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
You're in.
See you there.
All right, bye.
Okay, so let's talk. He does that, he photo bombs, and then it's like, what were we talking about again?
How do we become one of those agents?
How do you become a market expert, and how do you become acknowledged as a market expert? So let's talk about place, people, and properties. So place, what do you know about that neighborhood? If there are restaurants there, have you eaten in them, or do you have a copy of the menu? Do you know who runs the restaurant? Do you know who owns it? Do you know how long they've owned it? Have you ever been in there? Have you ever been seen in there? Gosh, do you have a blog? How do you put yourself out to your market? Do you have a blog? Do you have a Facebook business page? What do you have? Obviously not in a pandemic, but can you go in a restaurant and shoot a picture of yourself and go in and buy a cup of coffee or buy a meal? Take somebody over there. Go in there, take some picture of yourself. Oh, enjoying myself in thus and such place. Now you are viewed as somebody that eats in that restaurant. What you and I know is that your image on Facebook is partly how you live your everyday life and partly how you dress up to see other people, right?
Right.
Anybody can walk in and eat a meal in those restaurants. So start to be seen in those areas. Start to be present in those areas. Maybe you want to, when restaurants open back up, just think about this. If a restaurant can open back up, it's a big deal. What if you were to go to that or to do something, go in there, patronize it, get a little brief video clip of you shaking hands with the owner of that restaurant, congratulating themselves on opening back up, congratulating them and encouraging people, hey, if you can patronize this restaurant, this is their specialty, they're really good at this, They're a community-based business. Let's be behind our small businesses. This is very important, especially in this situation right now, where things that people worked for years to build are in jeopardy, okay? It's very important.
Yep.
So getting to know the places, maybe there's a school and they have a fundraiser. Maybe it's a silent auction. Go and purchase something at the silent auction. You know, advertise it on your Facebook page. Hey, this school is hosting a silent auction. Let's all go support this school. You know, come on out and support the community, that sort of thing. That's a good thing to do. Let's talk about people and properties. So people that you need to know. Who are the agents who are dominating that market? Make sure they know your name. Go and visit their brokers' opens. Go and visit their open houses when things are open back up. Go and be seen. How interesting would it be, Ori, if in a particular neighborhood that you wanted to own that neighborhood, every time there was a broker's open or an open house, that you showed up to the point that they began to expect you there? That's very important. So then you're seen as a player by other people. And amazing, let's say you close a sale with another agent and you're working at a high price point. You know what? Send them a little something in the mail. Send them a Starbucks gift card and a greeting cards. It was a pleasure doing business with you. I look forward to our next transaction. This sets you apart. Do you get those kind of cards?
No, I have not gotten. For
No.
open houses, I have. I get thank you cards, and it does stand out. I mean, you remember the name of that person.
That's right. That's right. You know, like I use something called banner season. If I do a transaction with somebody, I send them a card and a couple brownies, and the brownies are wrapped with my name on them. And they look cool. It looks like I baked the brownies and my name is on there. If you want to know more about banner season, take my number and I'll tell you about banner season. So know the properties. So what's important is each subdivision has certain particular things. Your property may be unique, but generally speaking, subdivisions are built within a certain period of time. So when was the subdivision built of the property you're describing, Chris?
I would say probably late 80s. I'm pulling it up right now. That question was coming.
And so then the question becomes, what was characteristic of those buildings in the late 80s? And one of the things you're pointing out is that a lot of them, it's time to redo them, right? So what were they made of? Is the building code different in Wichita than it was then? What are some good things about how things were built then? And what are some not so good things that are no longer really valid in the current market that would need to be changed, particularly structural things? What are things that negatively or positively influence insurance costs, for example? You know, everybody likes to see pretty countertops and all that, but the reality is if the building is structurally sound, or if you have particular weather dynamics and you have things for the building that stand up to those weather dynamics, you know, for us, it's hurricanes. So when things have impact windows or certain types of roofs, or they have a generator, those are big deals in our market, especially as we get ready to hop from a pandemic into hurricane season. And it's supposed to be a more active than usual hurricane season. How can we address that? So what's important is if things are built after Hurricane Andrew, which was in the early 90s, the building code was markedly different here in South Florida after that. So if I know that a building was built in the 2000s, I know that that building meets code, has lower insurance costs, and is more likely to withstand a major storm. So, Ori, is there a particular neighborhood that you're aiming for? Do you have a neighborhood in mind that you want to own?
Yes, Mace. I have been working on it. Basically the west side that I know the most. So yeah, as you're talking about this, I'm just coming up with ideas on how to approach prospects.
Very good. So you would want to know what's distinctive about your market. So, for example, with me, there are areas within 10 minutes of where I live. There are areas that have a $20 million and up price point. There are areas with a $1 million and up price point. There are areas with a $150,000 price point, and there are trailer parks. So obviously those are all different. And there's brand new construction that's going up, and there's also historic areas where you can't make changes in the property without the approval of certain people that are designated by local government. So what's distinctive about the subdivision that you wish to own? Do you know?
Distinctive, I would say, gosh, I would have to come up with something there, because there are different areas, like on the northwest. It's pretty much they're building new subdivisions, and it's getting there's a lot of construction now. The area used to be completely empty a few years ago, and now I'm so amazed by how many houses and businesses are building. So it is growing. So you can, it's a little hard to compare, even though it's just within a 4-mile radius. It is a little different. Does that make sense?
What are the advantages of the new construction areas for you as an agent?
The advantages would be that the school district in that area, I know the school district and I know a lot of people in the school district, and I feel like I'm knowledgeable when it comes to recommend those schools there.
I would say the advantages for new construction as an agent is it's a lot smoother deal. There's not issues with the home inspections, things like that. But some of the neighborhoods that they're developing, especially West Side right now, Emerald Bay, there's one going in there right now for over $1 million new construction. Craig Sharp's building it, but they're waterfront. I mean, like, you can take a boat, you can ski. It's like an old sand pit that they've built around.
Okay, so what makes you so sure that there's no need to have inspection?
Oh, I still think you should have inspections. I'm just saying, you know, that area compared to $1 million house in College Hill or Riverside, where they're built in, you know, 1915 to 1925, they're going to have probably a lot more issues than a brand new construction house.
Okay, agreed. Now, the other thing is, nobody is an established market expert in a new construction subdivision except the builder. And eventually, probably the builder's going to go away. So that leaves you. So if you can market and you can bring value to your buyers, this becomes huge, because then you're set up for the resale business when they sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that our new home divisions, and I've never worked a different market, so I don't know if everybody's are that way. So typically, like this neighborhood that I'm talking about, they have a preferred builder program. So there's 3 or 4 different builders that can build in that neighborhood. They have an on-site agent that handles all of the listings for that neighborhood. So the key would be buyer representation, which it blows my mind how people don't get that on new construction, and they just, okay, we'll go in and we sign whatever, you know.
Yes, and actually that's a great thing to do, a little video of what you bring to the table as a buyer representative. So that's an important thing. So in our area, generally speaking, either the developer has their own sales force, or they contract with a company to, you know, a local brokerage to represent them. And of course, the contracts are all geared towards the developer, right? They're not geared towards the buyer at all. And it's not like you can add different terms to them because they're pretty much cut and dry. This is what it is. You want to buy it, this is the contract. So you become an expert in that contract. You become an expert in those properties. You become known for marketing that. And that positions you well to bring value to the buyers. And then you got to know, going back to something we were talking about with Chris, you got to know, where do I go fishing for these buyers? Who might buy this? And what's a buyer segment that nobody probably even thought of? And so one of the things I would challenge you all to do is ask yourselves, what is it that is unique about Wichita that particularly post-COVID could be something wonderful that Wichita offers that every place doesn't offer? Maybe there's less density in Wichita. I really don't know. Maybe there is certain enduring industries in Wichita. I don't know. But what I could say is, just from my own standpoint, working with sellers right now in my market, I would need to really tightly qualify sellers to take a listing and make sure that they are prepared to sell at what the market will command, or I really got no business wasting my time and money listing those properties. And the other thing is that while a lot of those sellers, it's purely discretionary, a lot of the buyers, whether they're going to come in or not, because they don't need the building, they don't need the condo, they don't need the house because they've already got a home somewhere. So I'm repositioning myself right now with buyers to focus on investors that can come in and buy quick and get the discount they want, or people that have life cycle issues where they just got married, they just got divorced, they just retired, they just had another child, they need to get in a different school system. Something went on, a life transition, and they do need to move. And they do need a different type of home than they have now, because I think that's going to be, for me, a shift to spending more of my energy in owner-occupied markets than I might have spent before, okay? Because I was really heavily into that second home market, and that, I could either go to Bal Harbor shops and buy $1,000 purse, or I could just buy a condo for a couple million. What's the difference? Hey, why not, right? So, why not focus over here on this $600,000 or $800,000 subdivision where people are moving because it's a grade A school system and the homes are bigger and the lots are bigger and it's in a great low crime area? Why not focus on some of my energy on that? So that's what I'm doing, is I'm diversifying to a certain extent in this current market and incorporating that more so in. I get some of those buyers, but I more so get them by accident, really. I get them by referral, people that know me, and I haven't really ever sought that out, but I am now seeking out that market sector. That's a new twist for me right now. So let's talk about, what are your value propositions to bring to the table, and how can you really manifest those? What are you offering to luxury property owners if you're going after listings? What do you bring? How's your photography?
Professional.
Yeah, professional, very professional. Larger homes, like my new listing, we're going to do the drone footage and aerial footage of it so that they can see the water and all the acreage and everything associated with it.
Okay, videos?
Videos, yeah.
Okay. What do your business cards look like? Do they look expensive?
Mine are about 3 times thicker than what the normal business card is. I mean, they're super thick. I've had people think that I've handed them several cards and it's one.
Hold on a second. Captain, can you give me a business card? So when you really think about it, the business card that you hand people, it says something to them, and it doesn't cost much. So this is my business card. Let's see if you can see it. Let me get it right in front of me. There we go. Okay, this is my business card. So it opens up like this, you know, has a lot of information, because remember, I've got people that are high C, so I give a lot of information in my business card, unusually so. There's my picture on the back. Okay, so forget about it. Okay, so what does my card say? It says, connected, respected, your South Florida luxury partner. That's just my little tagline, connected, respected, because that's more important than anything. Do I know people, and do I command respect? And in the luxury sector, what I find is the people that command respect, they do their homework. I do my homework. I take it seriously. That's a lot of money on the table for these folks. And they're paying me a lot of money. And so I want to earn that money. And when I approach people like that, there's a humility to it, because I need to earn that money. I need for them to feel that I'm delivering the type of value to earn that money. So here's another thing I just recently added to the mix for my luxury listing presentations and to keep up with my sphere who float in that space. So this is my magazine. Okay, so whoop, let me get it in there. Okay, this is my magazine. It's called The High End. It's a semi-custom magazine. So it has my name and information. I'm able on the front cover, the back cover, and on the inside covers to customize my message, to put my listings, to do things like that. So, and then there's canned content, which is articles that sort of relate to the luxury space. So it's kind of fun. Interestingly enough, the first issue went out right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's like, okay, really? Like, well, yeah, I think that people could use a little fantasy food right now. I had that in the works in January, but hey, it is what it is. It went out, and interestingly enough, I've gotten calls from my sphere in those price points going, hey, that's great. You put out a magazine. That's so awesome. It looks really great. And so it's kind of nice because they called for something that was not pandemic related, right? Which was kind of fun. And it's just good to hear from them. Say it.
Who are you sending those out to?
So I'm sending those out for now for two purposes. One purpose, I send them out to my sphere who have bought and sold in that price point. And those could be shared with a friend, you know, like sometimes it becomes a thing of like, people go, yeah, this is my agent, and they show that. Or this is my agent, and they give the card. So those things don't cost a huge amount. Those issues right now, I'm sending only 200. That's it. And then I keep a supply for myself because I find a lot of people, they want to raise their price point. And then I have something to show agents that I get in dialogue with who may be interested in our company. Like, these are some of the tools that I'm using to get myself in staying in a higher price point. It's what my card looks like. This is what, and you know what? Sellers love print. It's interesting. Buyers couldn't really care less about print in my experience in the luxury sector because a lot of my buyers are in other countries. I'm not mailing this to other countries, but you know, I can have through the high end, and I'm happy to give you my contact for that magazine. I can have people looking at my magazine, and I can also place my listings in something called Unique Homes, which has a virtual component to it. So my listings can appear on their virtual magazine. And so that could go anywhere, and that could go to my international contacts. So those are two things. And then I use a tool called Lux VT, and that posts some digital advertisement in some of the higher end magazines and some of the higher end newspapers. And it also does these nice little flip tours of the photographs, and Ralph does amazing photographs, so I incorporate those. And then the Lux VT goes out, and then I can see how many people are looking at that. And I can send that, I can send like a drip campaign to my sellers and show them this is where I'm sending it out. Because you know what? On 4th of July, if you send your big boom fireworks in the beginning, nobody stays for the show. And people get restless if you try to keep them there. And the same thing is true with sellers, is if you show, look, this is my whole value proposition right now. This is everything I'm doing. Now, boom, I just listed the property and everything is all done. Oh, I guess you're home watching TV now because you're not doing anything for me next week, the week after that, the month after that. So little by little, show them, oh, okay, this week a video tour went out. That week it was in the New York Times. This week it went here. That week it went there. This week it went to these international outlets and so forth. If you're able to show that over time, then the seller figures, oh, they've got more tricks in their bag. I didn't see everything all at once. So I think that's just good to bear in mind when you're dealing with sellers, is they want you to keep giving value. Don't give all your value in the first week and then give nothing, because then you're under pressure. Oh, you didn't get any showings this week. Why not? Because you're not doing anything. That's why. So that's kind of their point of view. So let them see the effort unfolded over a certain period of time, even if you did it all at once, okay? So last minute questions, because I know we've been together for a little while now, even though we got started late. So last minute questions.
Good.
What kind of content do you share on your magazine?
So I have content about listings and local market, but most of it is canned content. So I'll give you an example for this issue. It's things on entertainment, things on green construction, things on design, things on art, you know, lifestyle and longevity, things on health, things that people spend money on, things that appeal to people at a higher income level.
Perfect.
Chris, other questions, thoughts?
No, I mean, you gave me a lot of good content. I mean, there's certainly neighborhoods. I mean, Wichita is very dissected as far as east and west, and I'm on the far northeast side of town, and there's definitely some I mean, I live in a neighborhood that's a golf course community, and I would certainly like to become, you know, the expert in my neighborhood. So you've given me a lot of good content to kind of go, and there are quite a few price range wise what I would consider luxury homes in our neighborhood, you know, 350, 400,000 and up. And so you've certainly given me some great content to be able to put forward in my neighborhood to really add value proposition as to why they should use me in this neighborhood.
Yeah. Yep. Why use your company and why use you? That's
Yep.
what you want to do.
Yep.
So listen, I wish you guys well and a lot of success. And I would say choose a market segment, figure out how to position yourself, and spend 3 to 6 months building your track record as an expert in that area. People will forget that you were new 3 or 6 months ago to that area. Make yourself a fixture. They will get used to seeing you, you know, and that'll be a great thing. And of course, what's the easiest way to increase your income? Well, yeah, you could sell more properties, but sell more expensive properties, right?
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Well, much success to you all, and it was fun meeting you.
It was a
You
pleasure.
too.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a great day.
You
Too.
Be
too.
safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was really cool.
Close it.
And guess what?